Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our YouTube page. Today's video is the scripture readings, the sermon, and a special piece of music that was shared with us for our Blue Christmas service. A Blue Christmas service, or sometimes known as the Longest Night service, is a service that pays attention to the grief that often many of us experience in this season of great joy. Often we try to put on a brave face or to wrap our grief up in the perfect package and tuck it away and not experience it or deal with it in this time of year. And yet for many of us, that is impossible. It's impossible to ignore the grief that is connected to the death of a loved one over the last year. It's impossible to ignore those memories that boil up for us of Christmases gone by. It could just simply be the grief that we are all collectively experiencing related to the pandemic and the reality that is that we will not be together with those that we love during this holiday season. There are many forms of grief that we feel, but this service offers us an opportunity to acknowledge those griefs, to bring those griefs forward, and to not pretend that they do not exist. And so I'm so thankful that you have clicked on this video. I'm so thankful that you have taken some time out of your day to listen and to learn with me about how God is at work in the world. And so we begin with a reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, and it's verses that you will know very well, verses that we will hear again in a few short days in our Christmas Eve services. In those days, a decree went out from the Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration that was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and the family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. And while they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child, and she gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in bands of cloth, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. May God bless to us an understanding of these words from the Holy Scriptures. Friends, I'm excited to share with you this piece of music that was written and performed by Kim Strange. The song is entitled Merry Christmas Alone, and I hope you enjoy it.
Someone said, hey, Merry Christmas. And somehow it just don't seem the same. 500 miles from home and it's snowing. I can feel the north wind blow. This room seems strangely unfamiliar. I guess that tree didn't help at all. And the picture of you by the bedpost, it seems the closest thing to home. We used to go for walks Christmas Eve. The snow would softly find its way down, and I would tell you stories, 'cause you would be my wife. Merry Christmas at home. card from my Aunt Jessie. She hopes I'm fine and doing well. An apostle from a girl I used to know. Now please keep warm and wear it well. Phone broke the silence. It was you there. I said you were just thinking about me. I said I know, I think of you all the time, and what you're doing for Christmas Eve. Well, I thought I'd take a walk in the snow, remember all the good times long ago, and maybe write a song for you to sing along. Merry Christmas alone. Guess we'd better be going now. We can only stretch a dime so far, and give my love to everybody. Please just stay the way you are, 'cause I'll be back when the spring is in the air, and when the snow and ice are gone, and I will tell you stories, 'cause you're still my life. Merry Christmas alone. Merry Christmas.
Well, would you please pray with me? In your grace and in your wisdom and love, we have come to worship together in this time. In the shelter of our homes, we gather together through this screen to not ignore the pain and the sorrow that we feel, but to name it and to hear your call of hope. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable unto you, our Redeemer. Amen. A few years ago, I heard a story about a grade school class that was tasked with creating a live action account of that narrative that we just read from the Gospel of Luke. They were to do so as almost a filler scene between two songs for their school Christmas pageant. And as the school prepared for their Christmas pageant, one of the students in particular was very excited because this was the year that he was certain that he would be able to take a leading role in the play. He was certain that he would be Joseph. And so for weeks before the auditions took place, this young man practiced his lines, practiced all of the things that he felt that he would need to know. And he also began to drop hints to the teacher who was in charge of selecting the roles, saying things like, "Geez, I sure would be a good Joseph," when she was within earshot. When the day of the auditions came, this young man was certain that he would get the role. But instead, his rival at school received the role of Joseph, and he received the role of the innkeeper. He was quite bitter about this, and during every rehearsal, he began to plot what he could do to get even with his rival, who in his mind had stolen his starring role. The night of the performance came, and the young innkeeper was ready to spring his trap. With all of the parents and the grandparents and the teachers in the audience watching and excited for the Christmas play, Mary and Joseph began the walk across the stage, symbolizing their entrance into Jerusalem. And they came to the door of the inn, and Joseph reached out and knocked on the door. The young man who was playing the innkeeper opened the door, and staying in character, he grumbly said, "What do you want?" Joseph said, "We are looking for a room to stay the night." The young man who was playing the innkeeper but wanted to be Joseph then sprung his trap. He went off script and he opened the door wide and he said, "Please come in. There's room for all." An audible gasp could be heard from backstage as the director could not believe what this young man had just said. You could have heard a pin fall in the crowd of people gathered, for they all knew that that was not the story, that this young man had gone off script. And Mary and Joseph stood there almost dumbfounded, staring at the young man as he smiled, knowing that his trap had worked. But then Joseph, thinking rather quickly, leaned through the doorway of the inn and took a quick look one direction and then took a look the other direction and then came back out and then loudly said, "You know, we may need a room, but no loved one of mine is going to stay in this dump." And then him and Mary walked away. The truth is, friends, that this little story reminds us that not everything always goes to plan. Sometimes the script that we have in our minds about how things will be suddenly gets changed. We collectively have gathered here tonight because the script of this Christmas season has changed. For some of us, this year included the death of someone that we loved dearly. And so this Christmas is the first Christmas without them. For others, Christmas is a time that even though the memories are good, that those memories are filled with the fingerprints and the faces of those that we loved but are now gone. For others, this Christmas has been marked by a loss of employment, a loss of sense of financial security. For others, this season has been marked by brokenness, broken relationships, broken dreams, broken goals. For others, still, this season is marked with illness, hospitalizations, surgeries and treatments, and surgeries and treatments delayed. For all of us collectively, no matter where you are as you watch this Christmas season has changed immensely due to the pandemic and the need to remain locked down. We are now facing a Christmas without our families, without friends. And as the song you just heard sung by Kim said, we very much are facing a Christmas alone. Without question, the script of how we thought Christmas would be or how we wanted Christmas to be has changed. And we're wondering what to do next, what to say, how to find hope and joy in what we know can be a hope and joy-filled season when all we feel is uncertainty, sorrow, and grief. As we ponder those questions, I want to take you back to that pageant that I just spoke about, that pageant gone awry. Because truth be told, Mary and Joseph could have just froze. That off-script remark could have sent the entire Christmas concert off kilter. And yet it didn't. Sure, it went off script and it challenged everyone's preconceived notions of what the story was supposed to be. But Joseph found a way. It took some time, but whoever that young man was who was playing that role, he thought quickly on his feet, and he mustered a response to keep the intent of the story intact. There's something about this narrative of our faith that's a lot like that Christmas play. As I mentioned to members of our family of faith this past Sunday, there's so much about this narrative that we read from the Gospel of Luke tonight that seems like such a perfect picture in our minds, and yet so much of it, from the tiniest of details to the big, elaborate things that take place in it, so much of it has raw human emotions connected to it. And it really is an account and an experience that's not filled with perfection, but in fact is filled with uncertainty, with worry, and even fear. The Christmas narrative really isn't all joy and wonder filled. There is absolutely an element of concern as so much of Mary and Joseph's life is seemingly being left up to chance. Their lives together were forced off the script that they thought would be true, and yet even so, they find a way. They find a way to deal with the uncertainty, to deal with the sorrows, to deal with the fear and the doubts that they experienced. And in doing so, they experience hope, love, and importantly, they know that God is with them. I truly believe that they found that way forward by doing two important things. The first was that they didn't lie to themselves. They didn't fake their way through it. They didn't pretend that everything was just fine and just perfect and put a fake smile on and carry on. No, they felt the pain. They felt the uncertainty as their lives were being changed. They acknowledged their worries connected to everything that was happening. Mary herself asked some very important questions of God when it was first announced to her that she would give birth. Together, they make this journey to Bethlehem in a time in their lives when they would have much rather have stayed home. And yet they went. They looked right into the face of the hardship that was in front of them. They did not pretend that it wasn't there. They saw it for what it was. They acknowledged it. And in acknowledging it, they found a way to move forward. That's the first thing that they did. And I want you to really think about that tonight. Because for all of us who are feeling grief in this season, this service gives us the opportunity to do what Mary and Joseph did, to acknowledge that hardship and that pain. We're not pretending that this Christmas is just joy-filled. There absolutely is joy around us, but we're also acknowledging the grief. We acknowledge that everything is not perfect, that for many of us, this Christmas has gone off script. We acknowledge that it's okay to not be okay. We acknowledge that we deeply miss our loved ones who have died, that we miss the feeling of secure employment, that we miss the feelings of security and safety beyond the walls of our homes. Tonight, we acknowledge that we don't wrap our feelings up in a perfect bundle and place them underneath the Christmas tree, never to be opened, and maybe, if we're lucky, to be packed up in the attic once the season is done. No, today we open them up. We let them out. We acknowledge that real pain. We note how off script our life may feel in this moment. We acknowledge it, and we face it head on. Friends, this is an important step in our lives. It's important to not hide away from those things that bring us pain and grief. It's important to acknowledge them, to voice them, to say out loud, I am feeling this way. It's important to name it. Because in naming it, we can then do the next thing that Mary and Joseph did. After acknowledging the uncertainty, the sorrow, and the worry, what Mary and Joseph did was trust. They found a way to trust God, to trust God's plan in their lives. But they also chose to trust each other, to trust that each would care for the other in the days and weeks and months and years to come. They also chose to trust their immediate community, that their community would support them, would help them through this, would care for them. And maybe most importantly, they learned to trust themselves. They learned to look deep within and to say, in the face of this grief, in the face of this uncertainty, in the face of this off-script challenge, I have the strength within me to take another step forward. I was thinking today, as I was preparing for this service and this sermon, that it's important to know that we are not alone. But in this time and in this season, when we can't be together with people, it's hard to point that out. It's hard to lift that up and explain. And so for the folks that connected in with us on our live feed last night, I pointed out to them that we had just over 40 devices connect in to our Zoom church. Now, on average, one device includes between 1 to 3 people. And so at very least, there was 42 people worshiping together. And at its most, there was upwards of 80 to 90 people gathered to support and care for one another and to face the very real hardships that they were facing. Now, why that's important to pay attention to is because no, these people are not sitting around you, and no, you may not even know them, but the real blessing of being part of a community of faith is that no matter what, these people are with you. These people are walking the road with you. That all of us care for one another. And no, maybe we can't do that in physical ways this year, but we certainly can do it in other ways. By praying for one another, by picking up the phone and calling, by leaving little packages and thinking of you gifts on doorsteps. We're still connected. And so, friends, I want to invite you today to trust. To trust that in this time of grief and hardship that you're facing, trust that you have people with you that will help to walk with you or carry you if we have to. Trust that you have the strength deep down within to face this time of uncertainty and to move beyond it. And importantly, my friends, trust that God is with us through it all. That God is indeed with us in the sorrows, with us in those shadowed places in our lives. And like the candles that are burning behind me, though that flame may be small, it's enough of a flame to illuminate our lives. Trust that God's grace and Spirit are guiding you always. Trust that you are not alone. For indeed, none of us truly are. As a community of faith, just as Mary and Joseph did for one another, we can support and hold one another. We can remind one another of God's great gifts of joy in our lives, and we do it by acknowledging the hardship that's before us, but together learning to take a step forward and recognizing that the sun rises anew each and every day. My friends, may you know those blessings, and may you ponder those gifts anew in this season. May God's peace and love be with you all. Amen.